Back in 1981, I had the American dream, the beautiful wife, the house in the suburbs, and a beautiful 6-year-old son. And one day I went to work, kissed my son goodbye, and never saw him again. In 2 weeks, I became the parent of a murdered child, and I'll always be the parent of a murdered child. I still have the heartache, I still have the rage. I waited years for justice. I know what it's like to be there waiting for some answers. And over those years, I learned how to do one thing really well, and that's how to catch these bastards and bring them back to justice. I become a manhunter. I'm out there looking for bad guys.
Denison, small community, northwest Iowa, north central Iowa, really. It's kind of in the heart of corn country.
It's a bunch of cozy folks, friendly. It's a nice, quiet little town.
Mid-November is the busiest time for most grain elevators. That's when we receive most of our corn. Every 4 to 5 days, we'd load 100 cars and ship them out to different destinations in the U.S. October 14th, after we got the first 25 cars started loading, I went out by myself to start opening the lids on the second set of 25 cars. The rail car was locked. I remember unlatching the lock on the top hatch. I've done that hundreds, if not thousands of times before, and never ever had anything close to something like this happen.
One from Crawford County.
It was a beautiful fall day, and I snuck out of the office a little early to do some scuba diving. And the reason I did that is because I was on the dive rescue team, and I knew there wouldn't be many good days left in the fall that I could get out and do some training. I had just gotten out of the water when my radio went off. So without going home or changing, I just went immediately to the scene. I was unsure of what they were talking about. My assumption was somebody had just died in some kind of accident. It took a long time for me to really study the scene and try to understand what I was looking at. It wasn't what I expected. Whatever had transpired there had transpired months prior to coming to Denison. When the railroad got involved, they were able to determine that the train had come from Mexico and was sidelined in Oklahoma for about 4 months. We were pretty sure that we were dealing with somebody that was trying to enter the United States illegally. They probably entered the railroad car on their own free will, but then somebody had closed the latch and locked it so that it couldn't be opened.
This is a case of illegal immigrants where the traffickers, the coyotes, are directly responsible for their horrible deaths.
Since the crime scene was on wheels, which was very unique, it occurred to us that we might be able to just move the railroad car to the crime lab in Des Moines.
Smuggling goes all over the world, and it's been going on as long as there's been people. They're in it for the business, and it is a business, and it's a very big business, a very lucrative business. It pays very well. And to smugglers, people are goods. These were 11 human beings who trusted the smugglers. Somebody was responsible for these 11 people who had died.
To find out who these smugglers were, first, big job, was to identify the victims. Second, to cover every inch of that grain car for clues.
In any investigation, examination of clothing and personal effects are part of the autopsy, and they can have very important pieces of information in both how it identifies the person and sometimes what happened to that person.
Some of the very first things that we looked at were documents, and these were foreign documents. We had at least 2 people that were from Mexico, at least one Guatemalan that we could tell. We found some documents from Honduras, and we found some pieces of paper, just little scratch notes of paper with names or telephone numbers. Somebody who might have been waiting for them, somebody who might have paid the smuggler, or maybe information about the smuggler themselves. Somebody was responsible for these 11 people who had perished inside this car. And we felt that we were now on the right track to finding these people and hold them accountable for it. The individuals who come into the United States illegally are coming here, most of them in search of a better life. They want to live the American dream.
If you live in poverty in Central America and you have 10 kids and you don't have indoor plumbing and you can't feed your family and there is no future for you, you're gonna make that dangerous trip. You're gonna save that money and you're gonna get every relative to say, send me to America and I'll send you money home.
Somebody was responsible for these 11 people who had perished inside this car, and we were looking for somebody that we were going to hold accountable for. We received a phone call from a person in New York. This man told us about his young brother that he was waiting for and how he was afraid that one of those bodies was going to be his brother.
My brother Byron was the last one in the family, the only one leaving on the house with my parents. He was taking care of them.
The smugglers sometimes will have recruiters who can go out and look for people, especially when you have people that are looking like they're lost. Someone recruited the young Byron in Guatemala and helped bring him all the way to the Texas border, to the Harlingen area in the United States.
Coyotes have absolute power over the people they traffic, and many coyotes continue to extort money from relatives even when the person has gotten into the United States.
Eliseo told us that he was living in New York when his brother called him, when his younger brother called him to tell him that he was in Harlingen in South Texas, and he needed money to pay the smugglers.
I mean, he didn't tell anybody he was making that trip. So it was very surprising. We were not expecting that. I said to him, if you're gonna make the next move right away, don't put yourself on any dangers. I'd rather you be caught than anything happen to you. And he told me to send him $300 because he ran out of money, which that's what they wanted to move him to Houston.
He got a name and a phone number and a method of payment.
The only thing I had to do was send him the money, and my hopes were that he will call me from Houston and tell me I'm here.
Eliseo's brother, Byron, was 18 years old. He called him his little brother, always. We were sure that he was there. We couldn't say who he was.
Even though we don't want to admit it, we were still hoping that it wasn't him. But everything makes sense that, it was one of them. With all the violence and all this stuff going on, that's what makes us sometimes just leave the country and look for a better place to live. I mean, my brother was probably, that's what he had in mind. He was young. He figured he'll look for a better future here. We take the risk, we take the chances. Unfortunately, some of us make it, some of us not.
Coyotes all over the world have abandoned people in the waters off of Florida. Children and mothers have drowned. They abandoned them in the desert coming across into the southwest United States. A coyote is ruthless, just like the coyotes in the wild. They're predators.
Eliseo's information was invaluable to us. A day or two after the news, he said he received a cold call from one of the smugglers, this person named Memo, who told him that he had nothing to do with it. He said it's somebody else's fault. And this kind of stuff happens, he said.
I remember saying to him, you were the worst, coldest person I ever spoke to. You knew exactly where you had him, and you never told us. You could have saved him. He said, well, I don't care. And I'm not gonna tell you right now, never call me back again. In fact, this phone number is not gonna be working anymore. And that was the last I heard from him.
During this phone conversation, he also told him the composition of the group. He said there would be 4 women and 7 men. And we found that quite interesting that he would have this kind of information because it was not public information. We now know that this memo that Eliseo was talking to was Guillermo Madrigal Ballesteros, one of our smugglers, one of the main operators of this smuggling operation. With the phone numbers that Eliseo gave us, we were able to find a couple of houses, addresses, more Western Union receipts. We were also able to find vehicles because they were stationed at these houses. From these vehicles, we were able to get other names of other peoples, and it started to grow. The investigation just started to spread out. The smuggler that we identified and whose name kept coming up is Guillermo Madrigal Ballesteros, one of the main operators of this smuggling operation. His nickname was Memo. Memo or Don Memo. Memo is a familiar term. Don Memo is a sign of respect. The way that we believe this organization worked, and it's very common with big smuggling organizations. You have your person or individuals that are in charge of overseeing the whole thing, usually on the U.S. side or on the Mexican border side, but close to the U.S. where they receive the goods.
It's just like a drug cartel. There are 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 people involved to find the immigrants, take their money, bring them across the border. It's illegal, and many times those stories end in a horrible way.
Guillermo Memo was in Mexico bringing in people to the United States. We spoke to 2 witnesses, a couple of young girls, Johanna and Lidney, who were able to provide us some invaluable information to the inside of the organization.
When you listen to the terrifying accounts of what the 2 Honduran women went through from start to finish, it kind of gives you an insight into what the journey was for the Denison 11 even before they got on the grain car.
Después que entramos a Guatemala, nos dijeron que el viaje iba a ser en avión, que duraría 10 días lo máximo para estar en Estados Unidos. Fue algo totalmente contrario a lo que nos prometieron.
The saddest thing about this journey, about this attempt to realize a dream, to get to America, is the extent that the coyotes exploit these people. They sell them a bill of goods, they get together their life savings. No one tells them that their biggest enemy is going to be the coyote and that they are going to go through hell.
El río lo cruzamos caminando. Y mi prima, como ella es un poco más chaparra que yo, ella se estaba ahogando.
I think in the back of their minds, every illegal immigrant knows that the journey can be a rough one. I don't think any of them want to think that the journey could end with the loss of their life.
Ella tuvo que soltar lo que llevaba para poder cogerse de mí y tratar de salir a la superficie del agua.
They told us about crossing near Tapachula, which is the southern point of Mexico, traveling through Mexico to Mexico City with Guillermo, giving instructions and being in charge of the operation from that side.
Y resulta que cuando estábamos subiendo el tráiler, era un horror, un aroma, olor, no sé cómo, terrible.
Estuvimos ahí un promedio de 30 horas, sin comer, sin dormir, sin nada.
La calor era terrible, sofocante.
En ese momento pudimos haber muerto.
Por fin llegamos al DF, donde él se presentó, me dijo, yo soy Don Memo.
I don't know if you can imagine putting your teenage daughter in the hands of a coyote, saying, here's our life savings, I'm going to trust it to a coyote, saying, I hope you make it. What recourse do illegal immigrants have? What can they say? A coyote ripped me off for $3,000, $8,000, left me here dead in the desert. Can I get my money back? I didn't complete my journey. Can I complain to somebody? They destroy your life. You're lucky if you're alive. You're lucky if you get in. And if you die, who's going to care about it?
Llegamos a la frontera de Reynosa, a cruzar a Estados Unidos. Cuando de repente llegamos a la orilla de un río, yo dije, Dios mío, otro río, yo no quiero más.
Right now we're at the Rio Grande River. Mexico being on my right side here, right across, it's approximately like maybe 100 yards. Because of the brush, it's real easy for a big group of aliens that wanted to cross over. And once they get across, they're gonna walk maybe several miles north of the river in order to get picked up and then get smuggled into town.
I think most people assume that once you get into the United States, whether you come in by car or you swim across the Rio Grande, you've made it. Your feet are on the ground. What they don't know is that the second challenge is the no man's land between the border and maybe 25 to 30 to 40 miles is the second checkpoint.
There aren't very many roads leading from the border communities along the Rio Grande up to our sort of major metropolitan areas. The government has set up checkpoints where all traffic has to stop and be inspected, sort of a double check, if you will, safeguard. If the people who are being smuggled want to get anywhere beyond any of these checkpoints, they're going to need either to walk through the desert in blazing heat and brush, or they're going to have to enlist the assistance of one of the people smugglers, that is a coyote, to get them through the checkpoint somehow, or to get them through on the train or find some other way to get through. Otherwise, it's just a big old desert and they're not gonna make it.
These two girls tell us that they wound up in a stash house where they meet Cacahuate.
Mr. Fernando Lacia, who went by the name Cacahuate, which is Spanish for peanut. And he was the primary person on the United States side for this particular group who housed the undocumented aliens and then arranged for their transportation north of the checkpoint.
It's called a stash house because these people are treated like goods. If you don't pay, you're not going anywhere. It could be to the point that you're being held captive, even against your will. Cacahuate and his organization and Memo, they had at least 5 stash houses that we are aware of.
In some cases, they'll use aluminum foil to seal the windows so nobody can see in, nobody can see out. These stash houses are used till they either get burned, they attract too much attention, or they get busted, the smuggler gets arrested. This particular neighborhood was used for smuggling of the Denison 11 aliens.
Donde nos llevaron como aproximadamente 60 o 70 personas en una sola casa.
In this stash house in Harlingen, Texas, is where Johanna and Lidney first met Byron and the Denison 11. That's where Byron called Eliseo for the final ransom money to get him through the checkpoints and into Houston, Texas.
Ellos nos dieron la opción de escoger si queríamos el desierto o queríamos el tren. Ellos nos dijeron que el desierto eran 3 días y 3 noches caminando. Entonces dijeron que el tren era mucho más fácil. Entonces fue cuando entró un sentimiento de nervios en nosotros, algo como decir, no, ¿sabes qué? Esto no lo hagas. Y como si alguien nos decía, nos detuviera y nos decía, no, no lo hagan porque van a morir. Llamé a mi papá y me dijo, yo voy a ayudarte a conseguir a alguien que te ayude a escapar de ahí. Fingimos salir a botar la basura. Y fue cuando logramos escapar.
Johanna and Lidney narrowly missed getting into that train car, which would have been the last ride of their lives. But the Denison 11 did. They got in and allowed those smugglers to lock them in for that horrible ride.
Cacahuate would send his workers in different vehicles, load up the people from that house, put them in there, take them to the railroad tracks where they would load up onto the train.
Cacahuate and Don Memo had a railroad conductor in their employ who provided train schedule information. If you were going to load something illicitly onto the train, you need to know that night where the train is going to stop and at what relative time. And it's not the same schedule every day. The people were loaded into 2 different railroad cars, 26 as it turns out in one. And when the capacity was reached there, 11 into another nearby car.
My brother Byron, he asked me several times to help him to come to the US. And the reason we always denied it was that You know, we were scared that something, you know, could have happened, would have happened to him. And we didn't want him to go through that. We wanted him to stay with our parents and just avoid all that.
We're a young country. We are the country of immigrants. Our relatives, our grandparents, great-grandparents, all dreamed of a better life coming to America. That's what these people are doing. They cannot figure out a way to get in legally. They want to work, and they want the same things we do.
They would have the people loaded at the siding nearest to the checkpoint, and then arranging for the people to be removed at the next siding north of the checkpoint.
They were fed the line that it's not going to be that long. You don't even need any water because you'll be let out in maybe an hour or so, which was a lie. They were duped into thinking that it was safe.
A coyote is a very cunning animal. At the first sign of danger, they take off. They hide.
That night, the train was stopped and searched by Border Patrol.
One of the officers remembers climbing up on top, opening up the latch, and finding this large group of people inside.
And sure enough, they were able to discover one car in which 26 people had been loaded.
Of course, that was the only group that they found.
At least one guy who was riding on the outside of the grain hopper fled the scene when the train was stopped, and it could have been his responsibility to let them out.
The coyotes have spotters that ride on top of the trains, or they drive parallel to the trains in cars. But when the Border Patrol inspected this particular train, they all bailed out, literally letting them ride to their horrible death. In my opinion, that's mass murder.
I can only imagine how this group of 11 must have felt when that train started to roll again. There must have been that feeling that we haven't been found, and so the train is moving now, so we'll be able to reach our destination. But I also can't help feeling that by this time they were starting to feel the effects of the environment, the enclosure, the lack of water, the heat. It must have seemed like an eternity locked up in there. The train stopped again in the Kingsville area. This is where I am sure that they thought, okay, we've made it. But the longer they sat in there, the doubts had to have taken place. They finally decided, maybe yell out for help. You're out in desolate areas. So there wouldn't have been anybody to hear them.
I suspect that at one point, when these individuals realized that no one was going to open that rail car for them, that they were desperately trying to find an escape route. In the hatch opening, there was a rubber gasket which appeared to have some damage, and it appeared to me that it would be consistent with individuals trying to peel away that plastic in order to try to escape.
You know, then the heat in Texas and all those states up there is... Imagine being inside like that and not being able to do anything.
causes of death of all 11 individuals were hyperthermia, or elevated body temperature, and dehydration.
You seeing all your friends dying in front of you, and knowing that you're next.
What was critical in order to make the identification was to have DNA samples from living relatives.
They weren't just bodies. They weren't just, remains in a grain car. They were people.
The main smuggler we were going after was Don Memo, of course, who we knew worked out of Mexico City.
Even though his fingerprints may not be on the hatch of that train, police say he's alleged to have been an accessory, a major part of the murder of these 11 people. And those families cannot even begin to heal until Guillermo Madrigal Ballesteros is in handcuffs.
We started putting surveillance on Don Memo. At this particular time, we had no pictures of him, no ID. I decided that we needed to identify him. We called the Harlingen Police Department. They were able to pull him over on a traffic violation.
Gabe called me to tell me, we have Memo here.
He did not have any proof of insurance or driver's license. I believe he didn't even know who the truck belonged to.
I called our lead AUSA at the time to say that we thought we should go ahead and hold on to him. Now go ahead and charge him, go ahead and arrest him. Our instructions were that we weren't ready yet because we were still waiting for DNA and we didn't have all of the pertinent facts that the Assistant U.S. Attorney felt that she needed at the time to be able to charge him with the smuggling. As hard as it was, we had to tell the police department to let him walk.
The real frustration for crime victims particularly, and I'm one of them, is the fact that the case isn't made and the perpetrator and the bad guy is allowed to either, number one, escape or disappear or commit another crime, a heinous crime again, because they didn't decide to prosecute in time.
I believe it was late April that the FBI laboratory responded with the matching of the DNA that was collected to the remains that were sent from Iowa. 11 victims, and we had 11 matches with what we had drawn.
This organization, even though the Dennis 11 had perished, still kept right on going. It's a business for them. That's their job, that's their work. They were good at it. One of the main targets was Cacahuate. It was their local contact here in Harlingen. We were able to tail him to a mobile home that he had rented. And we conducted video surveillance there. We were able to put the train conductor meet with him there. One of our agents had information that Cacahuate was in a stash house in Kingsville with a load of aliens. There's numerous people laying down asleep. And one of them was laying on the couch. I recognized him as being Cacahuate. And I immediately grabbed him put him on the floor. Licea, also known as Cacahuate, was subsequently charged with that smuggling load that he was apprehended with, and it kicked in the process of the Denison 11.
One of these cowards, one of the coyotes, is doing 24 years in American prison, right where he should be.
Arnulfo Flores, the train conductor, already did his 41 months and he's out. The missing piece of the puzzle right now is Madrigal Ballesteros.
The indictments came in 2003, so it's been over 10 years, and nothing has come about.
And the case has been dismissed without prejudice, meaning that it could be reopened. There is reason to believe that Don Memo may be back in Texas when and if he is found doing the same thing, a conspiracy charge, and reactivate the Denison 11 case.
I don't think I'll ever understand why charges were dropped, but those families need justice. Don Memo is out there. I'm sure he's doing what he's always done his whole life. He's put another group together, and they're just figuring out an easier, faster, better way to get illegal immigrants into the United States and exploit them. Someone has got to contact us and let us know. He has to be held accountable for what he's done. Guillermo Madrigal Ballesteros is a known human trafficker in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. He goes by the nickname Don Memo. He's believed to be in Texas or Mexico. If you've seen Guillermo Madrigal Ballesteros or have any information as to his whereabouts, please go online at cnn.com/The Hunt. You can remain anonymous. We'll pass your tip on to the proper authorities, and if requested, we'll not reveal your name.
There was a memorial service held at St. Rosa Lima Catholic Church.
There was actually people going around raising money to get them, or what was left of them, back to their homeland.
It would be very satisfying for me personally to put the handcuffs on Memo. It would give me great pleasure to take him to jail.
This is the land of, milk and honey, the land of opportunity. And they're willing to risk so much to just get, a piece of that. It made many people here in the community, me myself, just realize how good we had it.
Nothing can bring my brother back. But I think the responsible people should have been treated different, should have been arrested right now and in jail.
That these people voluntarily climbed into that hopper doesn't excuse the fact that they died. They did not deserve to die this way. They didn't deserve to die because they were coming up here.
Cerca de mi casa hay un tren y cuando yo escucho ese ruido del tren y yo me parece que miro a mis amigas, somos humanos y nada más queremos un sueño como todos los demás.
The names of the 11 deceased are
Pedro Amador Lopez, age 37, from Honduras.
Domingo Ardon Cibran, age 36, from El Salvador.
Isidro Avila Bueso, 38, from Honduras.
Omar Esparza Contreras, age 23, from Mexico.
Robert Esparza Rico, age 23, from Mexico.
Juan Enrique Reyes Mesa, 27, of Mexico.
Mercedes Gertrudis Guido, age 40, from Nicaragua.
Rosibel Ferrufino, age 24, from Honduras.
Leslie Esmeralda Ferrufino, age 17, from Honduras.
Lely Elizabeth Ferrufino, 35, from Honduras. Byron Edner Acevedo, 18, from Guatemala.